Dice's presentation for today on preparing your library for weather emergencies. I will go hand it over to Joanne Zeiss, who is really excited, and we're all excited to have her. Let's welcome Joanne.
Thank you all so much. So great to be here. I'm going to start sharing my screen, which I hope you see a big slide called Preparing for Natural Disaster Emergencies. If not, somebody throw up a flare. Great to be here today. I'm super thankful that you are here on this journey together. So welcome. A little bit about me before we get a little too far down the road. Let me go to my first slide. Here we go. So y'all can look at that. I am the curator of the Waring Historical Library, and I'm here in Charleston at the Medical University of South Carolina. Our library houses over 14,000 volumes spanning 6 centuries of medical history and thought. I was at the McKissick Museum in my early days, and I was also a curator at the South Carolina State Museum. And I serve on several boards that are sort of related to what we're doing today, including Palmetto Archives, Libraries, and Museum Council on Preservation, as well as the South Carolina Historical Association, the South Carolina Abandoned Cultural Properties Board, the South Carolina Public Archaeology Division, and I'm also a past member of the Federation of Museums for South Carolina, and I'm currently one of the members of the Low Country Alliance for Disaster Response. So in hearing that background, I want y'all to know because a lot of where I come from is that museum and artifact background. But what I'm going to share a lot of, and you're going to see some of that is museum-y, but it's all about cultural heritage institutions and cultural institutions. So a lot of it is going to be applicable to all of us, but also a lot of libraries, we have a lot of stuff, all kinds of stuff. So I think you're going to get hopefully a lot of stuff out of this. And I want to talk about what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about planning and the best ways to do that. We're going to look at some templates for y'all. We're also going to learn about ways we can assess our risks and how we do that. And we're also going to do some first response tips for y'all. So that's what we're going through. And one thing I want to point out is we're not going to talk a lot about attending to the communities that you serve, not through this. And the point is, like if you've ever been on an airplane and they say you need to grab your oxygen mask before you help someone else. So in your disaster plan, being ready for these things and being prepared will help you then serve your community. So we're going to focus on you for this one so that you can then focus on other people. So let's go off and get started with our next slide. And remember, you got this. Sometimes this can seem a little overwhelming, and sometimes the topics, we're talking about disaster, we're talking about things that aren't nice. But I want us, hopefully through this, to find some foundation and get some learning that we can delve into and to give us some confidence and some support as we go forward for you and for the team and for the communities you serve. So you got this. I believe in you. All right. Today we're also going to focus on natural disasters as opposed to unnatural disasters, let's call them. So we're going to think about hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, wildfires, tornadoes. Short responses is usually all going to involve water somewhere along the way. So we are going to talk a lot about water. So keep that in mind. So that's the other thing we're sort of going to talk about today. So I was hoping in the chat, some folks might go ahead and share reasons why they signed up for this webinar. It would be great to see some of the reasons that brought you here today. And while y'all are doing that, I wanted to let you know about the handouts that Nick so nicely mentioned, and thank you for the lovely introduction. The handouts that you have are going to include all of the links that I'm going to show you today. So don't worry about, what was that link? Where did this go? It's all on one of the handouts. And then there are some other guides and templates for you to use on your own, however you see fit. So they're all yours. If you have any questions about them or want some other guides, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to share anything that I have with y'all. All right. So we got some reasons for signing up for this webinar. Let me click on the chat real quick. Let's see, let me scroll down. Oh, library renovation. I'm getting my library renovated too, my little building, 100%. I'm with you there. Need to update policy. I also need to do that myself. You are not alone. Oh, disaster plan is old. Absolutely, 100%. Flooding in the library. It's happened to me. So lots of great reasons to be here today. So let's get on our journey together. All right. So let's start with some definitions. So what actually is a disaster? So emergencies are inevitable. These are sudden, unexpected events that require immediate actions. This is thing like an earthquake, a fire, a medical emergency, maybe a flash flood, those kind of things. Hazards are natural. They happen. So that's like a hurricane. So it's not exactly an emergency or hurricane. Hopefully you've got some notice that it's coming. A hazard is a condition, substance, activity, or event that has the potential to cause harm, injury, damage to health, property, or the environment. The point here is neither of those are disasters or have to be. We're going to have an emergency. I think all of us who've lived through the last like 10-ish years, we realize emergencies happen. We realize there are hazards out there. And so what we're trying to do is mitigate those risks and maybe not have some disasters. I've had a lot of emergencies in my life. They weren't all disasters. So we're going to keep that in mind as we move forward. Also, see about what disaster preparedness is. So these are these measures that are going to help us reduce the impact that we have that these emergencies and hazards cause us. And it involves education. And I'm going to give you stuff that's going to let you really delve down. Like how far do you want to go down into researching and creating your disaster plan? So we were talking about this earlier, like last week, I was at two different disaster training workshops. So we're always keeping in the know. And there's some new resources, one I'm going to share with you today. So it's always going to involve education, constantly revisiting. It also involves planning and revamping that plan. So we're going to go into that. And it also really involves your community. So it involves knowing what's going on around you, knowing what resources are available, knowing what vulnerabilities there are out there. So it involves a lot of people. It's a lot of teamwork for the whole thing. So your disaster plan should do a couple key things for you. And one of them is it should help think through what might happen and prepare. Now, it doesn't need to make you think about everything that might happen. And we're going to learn some ways to evaluate risk, but it's going to help you prepare. So if you're a place that gets a lot of flooding, maybe you can make sure the grates are cleaned out by facilities, things like that. So we're going to prepare for some of the hazards that we know. It's also going to help you make a decision in a difficult time. So in the aftermath of an emergency is not the time to start thinking about, oh, who are vendors who might be a freezer for my collection that I need? Or, oh, who do I call to get the electricity turned back on? It's going to help you already have that decision. And it's also going to help you get the information you need in a hurry. So it's going to have phone numbers in it of who to call. It's going to have names in it. It's going to have things to do. You know, what's the first thing you do when you get back on site? So all of this is already going to be in that disaster plan. So this is the three sort of major things that you need your disaster plan to do. So if we get started with it, we want to make sure we get started and not blown away. So one of the things I want y'all to do is think about your goals for this. Think about your expectations for what you want this disaster plan to be. And I'll fess up, my disaster this year was just about getting through this year because we're going through renovation, because we're in some new spaces. This is not the year to refocus my entire disaster plan. So I'm focused on this year. So I'm going to click on a link and I hope it's going to work. And this is one of the things that will be in your handout. This is from the British Columbia Heritage Emergency Preparedness folks. And this is a great document to sit down with your team and think about where you want to be. And it's a few pages long and you can set your planning goals for the basics of where you want to be, the good and the best. And any disaster plan is going to be better than no disaster plan. So go through a document like this, sit down with your team and set that goal. All right. And you also want to gather your people. And these are the teams made up of all kinds. We're going to go through and talk about the different kinds of people on your team, but you want to gather your people. If you've ever been through an emergency or disaster, you rely on people. So it's a good time to think about who those people might be that you can lean on or that can lean on you. And then lastly, let's not invent the wheel. Let's not reinvent the wheel. There are so many great disaster templates out there. We're going to look at a few. So you don't need to like create it from scratch. I didn't, and I don't think y'all need to either. All right. So moving on. First thing we're going to do, we're going to assemble our teams. We got our A team, and our A team is going to be those closest to you who know your organization the best, the people you work with. It's your direct reports, it's your managers, it's all of those people. You want to get all of them on board for this. And one great way to really get through a disaster plan if you're feeling a little overwhelmed is take a disaster plan and give different parts to different people. So if you're large enough to have a marketing people, they can do the communications part of a disaster plan. Facilities. So divvy that part of the disaster plan up, and then everyone can meet and make that to one document together. And that's also a great way in your disaster plan to assign roles. So the person who wrote who investigated the part about the communications plan can be your communications officer in the disaster. So gather those close workmates together and make that plan. Your B team folks are going to be, I hope you're building services that you already know. Like I hope you already have a really great relationship with your building services and facilities folks. They're definitely on your B team. Like I talked about earlier with cleaning the drains, like a few weeks, it was a couple months ago before hurricane season, I walked around my building, looked at the drains, and I called and I said, hey, I really need my gutters cleaned. So get on board with them. They're going to be people whose numbers you're going to need. And the C team is going to be your community and your neighbors. So you're going to want to rely on each other. Maybe you have shared resources you can do in a disaster. So you want to, at some point in your disaster plan, work with all these groups. Now, you don't need to bring everybody together into one team at one time necessarily, but you want to make sure you have all these things together. So your core group at your office, who are the ones who have to show up in the disaster, your B team facilities folks, who are going to be the ones who help you with your building right there. Maybe they're already part of your organization. And then your C team is your community and your neighbors. So that's all really point to put together your teams. And then the next thing we kind of think about, and I mentioned this already, is the don't reinvent the wheel. Templates, plans, and guides. Oh my, there are so many out there. And in the handout you have, I'm giving you a few that are really good. They're really tested. A lot of people use them. I know one looks like it's old, but it's still in use. I just saw somebody had it updated to 2023. So let's click on a few of these and I'm going to talk about one. Now, the first one we're going to look at is the Pocket Response Template, and this is created by the Council of State Archivists. As you can see right here, it's meant to fold up really tiny and fit in your wallet. And if you can't do anything else, if you just do this sheet, which I'm going to scroll down and go to the PDF, do this. Like if you can't do anything else. Also, if you have a big disaster plan, several pages long, still do this and keep it in your pocket. So this comes already filled out with probably way more than you're going to need, but just in case. The first side of it is all about communications and the numbers that you're going to need in time of emergency. And then the bottom is sort of first reaction and response stuff. Now there is already a great webinar on the NLM website to do this one-page resource. So go to that if you really want to do a deep dive and to do this. But it's a really great resource, so I want to make sure I mention it here. Now, the next one I'm going to bring up is another great resource. Of course, it doesn't start on page one, so don't get sick. I always get like motion sickness when the screen goes. So this is from the Amigos library system, and this one is kind of old, but it's still in use. You can fill it out how you need to. And this one is only 8 pages long, but it has a really good scope of information in here. And one of the things when we're looking at different guides and plans is, so I was looking at this and I had not noticed, is that it says keys. And my disaster plan doesn't have anything about the keys. And I have a whole box of keys that I was like, I didn't think about that. And that's one of the great things about looking at different disaster plans from other organizations similar to yours, is you see things that, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. So if I could give you maybe a tip would be like when you put your team together, everyone go looking at these different plans and read through them and see what you want to take and see what works for you. I have another one here that I particularly liked and I found recently, and for maybe some larger places, this might, sorry again, it's not starting on page one. Scrolling up. Okay. So this one is ones for your employees, and this could be something they have right in their desk. So it's going to have where do they go for, let's say, an earthquake. Because this one, I was installing a pottery exhibit during an earthquake, as one does, great luck, and nobody knew where to go for an earthquake. But if I had had this like right there in the plant, we could have gone. We could have looked up where to go. So this is another great resource, I think. It also has great stuff you can steal for your disaster plan. But think about the information that your employees have and that they can have quick access to. So I particularly liked this for that. And then finally, hopefully this is going to work for us. Dun, dun, dun. This is actually one from right here in South Carolina. And I want to turn you on to your state institutions. A lot like here in South Carolina will already have a template for you to fill out, but you can go, the link is in your worksheet if you want to go take this one, because this is a really great one that again is fill outable. And this sucker is like 20 some pages long. So this is a little, actually it's 41 pages long. So if you want to get this granular into it and you have that much time, remember, we're setting goals. This has a lot of stuff, a lot of great resources for you to do all that. And one thing to think about, if you are a standalone institution and you need to cover everything for yourself and the kind of plan that that has, but for someone like me is, I'm a part of the Medical University of South Carolina. So there's a whole plan for that. And we also have a plan for the libraries, but I still have my own disaster plan for us. I have a building that's not connected. I have offices that have special collections in them. So I still need my own version for my team to have. So hopefully, it's also going to differ on the kind of things you have to deal with. Like I can't turn my water off. And if I turn the electricity off in my building, I'd probably die, but I'd also turn like quarter of the campus off. So I better not even think about that. That's not something I have to worry about. I do have to worry about how I get that done. And I do have to worry about how I might get it turned back on. So these plans, the reason I'm not just going to give you one, and I'm going to send you searching a little bit, is you need to find the one that answers the things and the problems and the hazards that you have. All right. Now, one of the things we're doing, like I'm talking about, with the one that fits you, is we have to gauge our risk. We have to think about what those are. So risk is actually made up of three things. So we're talking about hazards, vulnerability, and exposures. And hazards are those events and situations that have potential to cause us harm. So earthquakes, fires, all of those things. A vulnerability is the weakness and the conditions that make your people, systems, or building more likely to be harmed by the hazard. And exposure refers to what is at risk. So it's the people, it's the property, it's the operations, and the systems that can be affected by that. So changes in those things change the amount of risk that you have. And we got to put all that together to think about while we're doing our disaster plans. Like we don't want to make a disaster plan. I want to make a disaster plan for a disaster that's not likely to hit me, or to worry too much about something that isn't actually a vulnerability of mine, or something that I'm not exposed to. And the way that we can do that is to think about our hazards. And this is exciting. I'm going to click on this link here. This is a brand new tool that's been put together by FAIC. I'm going to go to the homepage right quick just to let you know what this project is. So this was about resilience strategies for groups of folks to think about. I think they have some maybe funding issues going forward, but the resource is here and it's new. And we're going to go on this map, and I'm going to put my zip code in, and I'm going to bring it up. And you see how this pulls up right where I am. I'm going to zoom in, and here we are. Here's MUSC. My little building is like over here. And what this does is let you see what FEMA, see over here, in the next year thinks your risks are. And for us, of no surprise, it's hurricane, earthquake, which might surprise some people who don't know that we are in fact a fault and had a big old earthquake. And you can click on it, see the zones of unhappiness. You can also get an idea of what they mean. So down here, you'll see that there's different kinds of flooding, and that makes a difference. So whether your flood is coastal flooding or if it's in a mountain, but you can see all of this and get an idea of what FEMA thinks. And this is a good tip. If you don't know where to start, I should not be all that concerned about hail, but it's a good place to start because, again, we don't have the capacity to deal with everything, right? Now, this is a fun resource, and I encourage you to go check it out because you can go, there's all kinds of data all the way up to 2099, but That's not what we're working on today. We're not resilience. We're going to do disaster planning. So let's go back here. And I was hoping in the chat, some of y'all might share what you think some of the possible natural hazards are for you. So if y'all go into the chat and maybe share some of the things that come to mind when you think about hazards for you. And let me open chat somehow. There we go. Let's see what we've got. I'm scrolling down. Tornadoes, floods, earthquake, absolutely. So that map is from FAIC, and the link will be in your sheet. Earthquake, tornado, very good. We were at the museum I was in. Columbia is also in this earthquake fault, and we had to change the way that we stored some of our things because we're on an earthquake fault, and we know that even though it doesn't come up that often. Floods, water events, every time it rains. This is Charleston. We got people coming to work in kayaks, so I feel you. Snow, ice. Ice is another one. Fires, yes. Especially, with climate changes, things are changing, and I think that's why the FEMA detail for like what they're looking at right now, because it can change. All right, those are some great, well, I guess they're sad things, but thank you all for sharing. Flash floods. I've been in a flash flood. Yes, kayaks. You can Google it. 100%. Kayaks to get to work. So definitely flooding there. So there's a lot of different things to think about, but we want to rate that risk, right? And to do that, we want to be realistic about what those hazards are. So when you think about the likelihood of Charleston, South Carolina being hit by a hurricane, that's pretty high. And the damage it could cause, some critical damage. So with this matrix, I would give myself a high red 25 on that. So this matrix, it multiplies the likelihood score by the impact score. So I might get hail. How damaging would that be to my building? How secure is your roof? What assets do you have outside? So if you sit down with your team and you go through what everybody's thinking, and it helps you get better idea of maybe instead of trying to ask for everything, thinking about really what your realistic hazards are, and what the real critical to negligible impact would be on your site or sites. And that is included in one of your handouts, that chart. There's also another chart that I've included for you that asks you to sit down and think about what's happened over the last 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years, I think it is. So if you live near an airport, if you live near, and I was born near 3 Mile Island, do you live near a nuclear site? And I'm not trying to scare you, just put it on your radar. And if you get your whole team to do this, people who've been there a long time, people who haven't been there, they're coming with their own knowledge. I think it's a good idea for your whole team to do that as well. So we also need to think about our physical environment. So if we're thinking about those threats to us from those hazards, we need to think about where we're living, our house, and those kind of things. I told y'all how I asked them to clean out my gutters. So I encourage you to walk around the perimeter of your building, get to the roof. It's safe. And you'll be surprised by what you can discover. Are your roof seams sealed? Those kind of things. And I have another link for you we're going to go to here. Again, doesn't start on the first page. We're going to scroll up. This again is from the Foundation for the Advancement in Conservation, a great group. And this is something you can walk around your building with. This thing is pretty long at like 13 pages, but you can focus. So not everything is going to apply to you on here. But you can walk through and see these possible vulnerabilities that you have and get them to address. And it's great because I'm not a background in construction. Like I don't know what I'm looking at. And this is a really great resource to get you thinking about some of those things. The other next thing I want you to think about, and probably the most important, is human safety. So walk through your space as one of your patrons or visitors might. I feel like in the 1960s, 70s, libraries went through a thing where they're like, we're going to hide the stairs. Why would anyone take the stairs? So can the people in your building find the stairs very easily? Is it hidden in the back of the building? Are your fire alarms, which I hope someone is coming to check all of those things, but don't assume. Are they sound and light alarms? If you have an outdoor space, do the alarms work outside? I've had that happen to me. We're doing a program outside and you're like, why is everyone leaving the building? So how would you get information to people who might be outside of the building, but it's still an area that you're responsible for? So think about human safety, walk through it as a patron, maybe ask some friends to walk through the space for you who don't know it that well and see what their experience might be if they had to get out of your building in a disaster. The last one down there is get to know your first responders. And this can be really, really important. It's part of that community building thing we talked about. Um, don't assume that they know that you're awesome and that you're special. We all know you are, but invite them over and let them get to know you. Show them around your place. And I'm not casting aspersions here, but food is a great way to do that. And we last week we were talking with some first responders and they're like, absolutely. Have a breakfast for us. We will come to your place. You can show us all around. If you have a storage area you need to show them. If you do have a collection, you can give them a list of the particular items that you have for them to be alert of when they're in there and as they can. I know when I was at the museum, we absolutely had that list. We met with them very often. They knew what the most important things in the collection to get or the areas to watch out for, how your patrons might act in a space. They want to know all that. So definitely get to know them. I'm going to click on, this is a great resource for that. Ooh, I went too many. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. All right, let's go here. All right. This is a great resource scrolling up on working with emergency responders to get that done. It gives a lot of great resources here of like, do you need to contact your state, local, maybe tribal authorities, maybe the Coast Guard if you're in a coastal city, the kind of things they might be interested in, because we don't want to waste their time. So what are they interested in seeing and getting to take a look at? So that's a great resource there as well. And that is included in your packet. Now, if we want to take a moment for everybody to maybe, I want you to think of 3 locations, either around your site or in your building, what a hazard of that location might be. So is it, an outdoor space with giant sculptures? Is it a giant picture window? And then think about what a possible mitigation would be. So just take a few minutes to ponder for yourself a couple locations, what those might be, and then a possible mitigation. And then this is something that you can do with your team. This is a great, as you're working on your disaster plan together and trying to assess risk, this might be a good place to start to just, as you're walking around that building, thinking about the kind of mitigation. And there's some great ideas that are going to come from your team as well. So take a minute for that, just to kind of give you some time to prep on that. I'm going to check the chat real quick while y'all do that exercise. See if there's, oh, all right. So I hope there's some good stuff there if anybody wants to share maybe their location, their possible hazard, and maybe what they might do. I know that one of ours was, flooding, of course, and the front door, I've been trying to get it fixed at the bottom, but I got a floodgate put into it. That's just from walking around the building and thinking about what are the possibilities that I could do to mitigate this. All right. So I hope that was a good exercise. Oh, janitorial closets. Oh yeah, that can be a threat. And one thing to think about when you think about chemicals is everything is made of chemicals. Water is a chemical, right? So when a disaster strikes, a lot of things can turn ugly. So you're going to think about those chemicals you have. It's great to think about that. But things like photographs, negatives, there's all kinds of stuff floating in water. So please, if you do not know not to get in standing water, please don't get in standing water. Rare books, extinguishing agents, 100%, 100% water. And the things they use to put out the fire, sometimes that can cause more damage than the fire damage. All right, so thinking about vulnerabilities and exposures. So we have our natural hazards that we're looking at maps to kind of gauge, am I in an earthquake zone? What are those kind of things? Mitigation. So what are some other vulnerable things that we have to think about? And I'm going to click on this map here. And this is the map. This is a FEMA map. This one's been around a while. Some of you may know it. It's the National Risk Index. And we're going to go to this map. And it's similar to the one we looked at earlier. Let me put my zip code in. I'm going to go here. You're going to scroll down and we can see a lot of the same information. But what I want you to think about in this one is if we go up here, the social vulnerability and community resilience. So for my area in Charleston, our social vulnerability is kind of moderate. And so you say that the social vulnerability is looking at factors in your community like poverty, transportation issues, housing, and how that can react, how your community responds. So you're not just thinking about yourself here, but you're thinking about your community and how it's going to be able to work with you, what you can do to help, and put you in front of those kind of ideas. The other thing is the community resilience, which is and the community's ability to prepare for natural hazards, adapt to changing conditions, and withstand and recover quickly from disruptions. And so you see here in Charleston, it's very high. Our biggest threat, is hurricanes, and they do a lot to prepare. So I'll give them some kudos to that. Now, it might be different for a different part of the city. Say North Charleston may not feel like downtown when it comes to that. There's something else I want to bring up, and I'm going to use where my brother lives, which is Alpine, Wyoming. I'm going to bring his up. And his risk index is relatively low. His community, according to this, is not as resilient as mine. So if we go down to community resilience, he's got a lower score. So that's something for him to think about. And one of the things I wanted to point out to this is when we're thinking about our community, Alpine, Wyoming is like right here. He is 2.5 hours from his county office, which is down here. So if he got a speeding ticket, he's got to go 2.5 hours to pay it. So who actually is his community? Who are his neighbors? Up in Jackson Hole, that might be closer. So, or is it over in the next state, which is Idaho? So thinking about who your community actually is, sometimes across lines, is really important to think about first. So who are your first responders going to be? So you want to think about that as well. All right. So thinking about the social factors, how well your government is ready for a disaster, state, county, local, all of that good stuff, and the environmental things around that as well. So these are what those maps are going to help you try and discover about yourself. And they are a lot of fun to just dig through. Now, when it comes to getting ready for disaster and really getting those prep, after we've looked at our risks, we've looked at our vulnerabilities, and we've got a good idea of the kind of threats we might face, and we focused on the major ones. It's time to get a kit ready, to get some preparedness going. And so for that, we can put together a disaster response kit. And this can be challenging. We may feel overwhelmed picking everything out. But we can start with personal emergency kit, or as I like to call them, go bags, because that sounds way more fun. And a go bag is that team leader or team leaders, if you have more than one, should have a bag like this at the ready, maybe in their car or their house. And this is going to be personalized to the things that you think you need when you first get back on site after something's happened. So it should have a little bit of first aid in it, maybe a little food and water because you might be at the site for a while and there might not be running water and you might need a snack. PPE, protective equipment. So if you're coming into a space, boots, those kind of things, face masks, maybe eye goggle type things. Some kind of light headlamps are really helpful because if you want to rely on your phone, don't rely on your phone too much because you don't know what the emergency electricity situation is. So don't burn up your phone. Have headlamps in there, something that keeps you hands-free. Maybe even remember those old cameras, the disposable ones, maybe put one of those in there. So you can take pictures because you need to take pictures for insurance reasons. Of course, a copy of your disaster plan. And I'm going to click on here and you're going to see a list that's included in your packet of some things you could put in your grab and go bag. This is more than what I would put in mine and maybe some other things that it has things I would put things in that it doesn't have. But it gives you a good idea of a place to start. I'm just really going to recommend boots for any situation. We definitely want some good boots to be nearby. I also like that their bag is reflective because if the lights are out, if you're in a big building, you want to be seen as well as see. So that's a list of things you might put in your go bag. Now, in your recovery kit for things that are on site to help you, like the supplies you need to really start dealing with the disaster, um, you want to have something like that available and think about putting it in a multi-purpose container. So I'm going to click on something else here and it should bring up, we're going to go down here. Why not just put your disaster kit in the bucket, in the disaster bucket, or in the giant trash can, or in a cabinet if you need something that big? Ours is in a plastic tub. We have plastic tubs around, but we also have a bucket in there. So think about multi-purpose ways that you can make that kit very handy. And I'm going to scroll up here and show you what this is. So this is included in your packet. So this is a manual to help you decide what you need to put in that and what kind of, storage container to put in. So this is from the Association of Registrars, and registrars are always amazing. So this is a well thought out document to help guide you in that. The other one that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to click on this one, is going to take us to, oops, too far, to Harvard. And this is a really great list. And I have the link for you as well of things that you might need to put in your recovery kit. And again, these are things that you're going to think of it as a shopping list. So I have a running list on Amazon of things that I need for my disaster kit. And I just have that list there and I add to it as I think of something new or see a new product. So for this one, I definitely would have work gloves, which I don't see on here, but I would have work gloves on top of nitrile gloves. So I definitely have that on my list. And that's one of the great things about going through those different disaster plans is you get different ideas for things. So the other thing I want you to think about in both your go bag and your recovery kits is to check them routinely. What are the procedures for those kits? Don't keep them locked. What's in them? Who's checking on if the supplies are still in there, if the supplies are still up to date? So some of the things in your supply cabinet can go bad. So who's checking on that? How often are we doing that? So make some procedures for those supply kits. I know I very often am guilty of this. Like I need a Band-Aid and I go in the first aid kit and then I don't tell anybody. And then eventually you get to the last Band-Aid. So what are ways we can avoid that happening? So the other really important thing, and this one is so important, I think it often gets left out of our disaster planning, is the communication plan. This is really important. So really take this part of your disaster plan seriously. Like in that pocket one, that whole first page was about communication. It was about contacting people, getting information. You want to create a contact list. Actually, I'm wrong. You want to create more than one contact list. You want a contact list, which are all the people you need their contact info. You need to be able to get in touch with them. They need to be getting in touch with you. But you also want a contact tree, which is so the director calls the manager who sets out the employees who then might call their interns. So there's a contact tree. So the head director isn't trying to contact everyone. There's a tree of communication. So you want to create those lists. Then they're super important to have. And it's also important to think about being redundant on them, not reliant on just one, because during an emergency, there could be a large scale outage of one or the other. So you want to think of more than one point of contact. So SMS text alerts, a voice message, they eventually go through. They might take a while. Emails as well. Someone may have email and someone else might not. So there might be an outage in one area, not the other. Push notifications, WhatsApp, Zello. Not that you have to have all of them, but think about what those communication avenues are in your disaster plan ahead of a time. And it's really important to do that. You also want to make sure you're sharing good information. Nature abhors a vacuum, but rumor mills love them. And so if you don't give good information out, people are going to fill in the blanks with maybe not great information. So make sure the any information you're sharing is accurate. One of the things you can think about when you're creating a message is you want to alert, you want to inform, and you want to reassure. And one of the things that you can do is go ahead and have those messages prepared in your disaster plan. I'm going to click on one here, and I think this is the ALA crisis communication guide. Again, this is going to be in your list. And this is going to help you think about messages that you might want to send. But go ahead and draft one. Have all the information filled out except what the name of the disaster is. And it can be quite short. Sometimes it can be quite brief. It can be like, we are aware of the situation, responded, and will update you every hour or something like that. But just have a template that you can then fill in the blanks. So you want to think about who you're sending it to as well. You're going to think about, is it going to staff versus volunteers? And please think about your volunteers because they will show up at your site with buckets and rags, go through any caution tape and start doing stuff. So you really want to make sure you're communicating to all the people you need to. So your staff message might be different from your volunteer message, might be different from how you're talking to media about what's happening on your site. And there are lots of apps to help you get good information. Your state, local folks, think about your power company so you can see where power is available. Go ahead and put any bank and insurance information that you might need if you are a person in charge of that. That's one of those apps, like you don't need it until you need it, and then when you need it, you can't get it. So go ahead and put that on somebody's phone, as well as traffic maps to see where are safe zones, and how you might be able to get the things that you need. When disaster strikes, remember to stay in your designated space. You're going to activate those emergency roles. Leaders are going to start doing what their leadership needs to do. They're going to have authorized communication. They might have walkie-talkies and radios. And remember not to leave your space until you're supposed to. I cannot tell you how many fire drills people took lunch on, and that is no good. The first responders are trying to make sure everyone is accounted for. So definitely do drills so that when disaster does strike, you don't have people roaming away. So let's go. We're going to skip this one because we're running out of time because I want to talk about some other things. So re-entry. When you get back into your space after the disasters happen, it's really important to get that plan. You've already made decisions. You've already thought about this. You can stay calm and rely on your plan. You also want to establish safety and control. Remember those volunteers I mentioned? We need to control your space. So you might be allowed back on once first responders say, yes, you may access your premises, but you still have to make it safe. You still have to have control over that. So what's going to happen at nighttime in your space? And I'm not trying to freak you out. I'm trying to make you plan ahead. You also want to assess the damage. One of the roles in a good plan is the recorder of information, the person who roams around the building with a clipboard, writing down all the things that have happened and taking pictures. And this is an important part of your disaster plan for insurance. It helps you find out maybe where something went. You look back on those pictures. Where did this come from? What happened to it? And this is all going to help you communicate with the people that you need to communicate with. And I want to stress that first aid, taking care of all of the people, is really this is important. Like the other stuff will all go to crap if you're not taking care of you and the people that work with you. So there is something called stress first aid, where you're going to learn to take care of people, give them calm, give them comfort, speak with confidence, and your plan is going to help you do that. So be flexible with your folks. Understand that if a disaster has happened at the work site, it's probably happened at home too. And it might be true for you. So you want to practice self-care and model that as well. So will your people have trouble getting into work? Like, will they be able to get to work? And this is something to think about, especially if you're HR. How are we getting people to work? How are they getting paid? What are the rules around that during a disaster? So if you are the person responsible for that, have those answers ahead of time. That might not be in your disaster plan, but you definitely want to be thinking about those things. Think about your staff and the things that they're dealing with and be flexible with the crisis they might be having at home. Some quick tips for treatment and triage. I'm going to show you, we talked about a few apps, but if there's one app you put on your phone for disaster preparedness, it's this one from, once again, FAIC. And I'm going to click on it. I'm going to hope it works. I'm going to open. All right. I'm going to go down here. This is the app, Emergency Response and Salvage, and I have a link for that too. And this is some of the things that it does, and it's amazing. You just click on one of these things. If you're having wet books, if you're having ceramic, whatever it is, if you need to deal with the situation, it's all right here. This is an amazing free app that they offer. And I highly recommend you putting that on somebody's phone so you have everything you need right there. Another great resource is, oh, sorry. Oh, wow, we went really far. Oh my gosh. Let's go to, there we go. Right here. All right, so this is from the Library of Congress, and this is their disaster salvaging wet collections. And it's got, one of the things I love about this is it has pictures that help you understand how to do this. So that's amazing. Print this out. Also, anything that you have on the web, print it out. A lot of resources that you find, those links are going to be broken. So if you have a really great resource, if you have something you might need in a disaster, don't assume you will have the internet or the ability to connect to your server. So the things you need in your disaster kit, print them out. So I'm going to go through a few triage things. And while I'm talking about it, I want you to think about all the areas where having a preparation plan are going to help you complete some of the tasks you need to do when you're dealing with a disaster. So let's talk about recovery after a water incident. So after you've ensured safety, so you've ensured safety, you've been declared that you can go in the building, you're going to be watching out for any risks and hazards, electrical lines that are down, debris, structural damage, and you're going to be wearing the PPE you have to go in there. You're going to have your flashlight. You're going to be walking around and assessing and triaging. Do you need to, is this space still actively got water flowing through it? Is water still active on the floors? So you're going to be assessing and triaging that information with your team that you have. And one of the first things you want to try to do is control your environment. So you're going to want dehumidifiers and fans. Hopefully you have them or you know where you can get them because you've already figured that out in your disaster plan. You want to get stuff off the floors. So do you already have or know where you're going to get tables or pallets to be able to do all that? Do you already have an identified space where you're going to do that work because your area may not be able to be fit to work in? So are you going to do that outside? Where are you going to do it at night? You've already thought about that in your disaster plan. Now, if you are handling materials, you're going to want to have blotting paper already so that you can blot those books. If you have books, don't wipe the covers off. Just blot them. If they still have lots of water in, you can gently squeeze some of that water up. And you're going to be using things to absorb that moisture. Don't force the pages open if they don't want to. If you can open pages, you're going to do that. And you're going to put blotting paper in between every 10 or 20 pages. If you can lay the book like a V, like you see down here, and then put paper in, if the book is strong enough, if the spine is strong enough, you're going to have it upright then, like you saw in the Library of Congress photos. And you're going to handle it by the spine. It's just very delicate and it's surprisingly heavy when it gets wet. So you're going to fan those pages with your blotting material. You're going to point your fan not exactly at the books, but like over, under it, around it. Don't ever point a fan at anything that's wet like that. Put it around it. You're creating a light breeze to circulate. It's all about the circulation and the dehumidifying. You're also going to keep track with the labels that you already have and your tracking document of, oh, I picked it up off the floor in this office and I moved it over here. You want to going to keep track of that as you do it. And then you're going to clean your surfaces. If you can't and you can't dry things out, you can freeze things. And you've already thought about where you're going to freeze them because you've already reached out to a grocery store maybe and you're like going to use their freezer. Or you already know that there's a university that has a giant freezer that they use for things. So you can freeze things. Mold will start in about 48 hours. So you want to try and get ahead of that. And freezing, if you can put it in a flag and then get it frozen, it will pause that process as long as it's frozen. Once you open it back up, it will start back up. But that gives you time to really plan out. So you can work with different vendors and get in touch with them. You've already done that in your disaster plan if you need to. And because when the disaster happens, everybody's looking for them. But you've already got one on retainer, or you've already reached out for who that is in your neighborhood, and they know who you are, and you've already met them. So you can call them right away and say, hey, I need that freezer, or hey, I need you to bring those dehumidifiers that we've thought about in the building. So keep communication and all of that open. And with the plan, you want to revisit the plan. Like one of the comments were like, our plan is old. Yes, you should be checking it. And a great time to think about when to do that, May Day and 9/11. If you can do it like twice a year or maybe once a year, those are good times, to remember, oh, it's May Day. It's time to revisit the disaster plan. You want to practice the things in there. Do people know where the disaster plans are? Do they know where the kits are? You want to, like I said, check those supplies. You want to evaluate post-event and post-practice and keep up to date with all of that. And with that, I'm going to end with this, that there's no harm in hoping for the best as long as you're prepared for the worst. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. I'm going to stop sharing. And that was so much information that I threw at y'all. So much. And I realized that. And I hope that the handouts let you really spend time and sit with this because it's a lot about decision making. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. You're very welcome for all the handouts. I hope that's the stuff that you really sit with and take back with your team. There's no one size fits all here. I wish there was. I wish I could just say, here you go, do this, but I can't. I have to give you a lot of information and then y'all have to take the time to kind of sort through it and see what works for you. Every organization on this call is going to be slightly different. So sitting down with your team and thinking about what works for you and what doesn't. And I cannot stress this enough. If you can even only do that one pager, you're going to feel so much better in that moment to at least have something in your hand to help you make a few decisions. And then you can make those longer term plans as you go. You don't have to plan for every disaster right now. You can assess your risk, figure out which things are the highest risk for you, where are the biggest hazards and where are your biggest vulnerabilities, and maybe put that in your strategic plan to have a whole fleshed out plan within the next few years. There also were, I don't know if there will be anymore, but there were grants for this. So you can definitely find some grants in the AIC, FAIC, those conservation places, as well as the Northeastern Document Center. They did have grants. The Smithsonian has some grants if you'd like to send some folks to disaster training. So that's also an option. This is something that you build upon. So it's not one and done.
Marianne.
Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Hi. I hadn't had a chance to look at the handouts, but I just had a question. Did some of the handouts provide like a crisis management plan? Like what should we do in case of a drive-by shooting or a bomb threat or any of that kind of thing? And if it's not in those handouts, what resource would you recommend?
So there are a few of those in there. So what I've provided for you is like the one pager all the way down to the 40-something pager. And that really long one does deal with some of those man-made type disasters. So active shooter and those kind of things. And those are definitely not my areas of expertise. If you are a part of a
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.